Just a quick disclaimer. This will be a longer video, so make sure you guys grab your snacks, popcorn, protein shake, coffee, whatever it is. Make sure you guys grab it, and let's get right into the video. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Tyrone back with Tech Life. And what I have pulled up for you guys here is back from T-Mobile's Capital Markets Day in October of 2024. This was October of last year, and I wanted to pull this up because I wanted to talk more about T-Mobile's position today and competitively, because it has changed, right? A lot has changed in the market. Backtracking to last year, at the time that T-Mobile presented all of their numbers and guidance through 2028, the Frontier and Verizon deal had already been announced, and that has since closed. And since that time, we just recently got the AT&T and Lumen acquisition, right? That just got announced a couple of days ago. So stuff is changing very rapidly. So T-Mobile has made their chess moves, right? They got Sprint, they got US Cellular, they got Lumos, they got Metronet. And I said it in videos long ago that eventually, right, Verizon and AT&T are going to start using their buying power. And then we got massive scale with the Frontier deal for Verizon, and we got additional scale on top of the already massive scale that AT&T has today with the Lumen deal. So where does that put T-Mobile from a wireless perspective, right? Because T-Mobile really doesn't have any wireline today, right? They don't, even after Lumos and Metronet close, well, Lumos already closed, but even those two deals, T-Mobile really doesn't have like this huge, massive wireline business. So they're still going to be majority of the time looking to gain profitable share taking on wireless. That's going to be their main bread and butter moving forward on any type of upside, any type of percentage increases as it pertains to EBITDA, free cash flow. It's all still going to come from wireless. So the top 100 markets that you see here on screen, right? What stands out here is number 1, number 2, number 3, and growing. So they're telling us in the top 100 markets where they're number 1, they're still growing. Where they're number 2, they're still growing. And even where they're number 3, they're still growing. That's just a basic overall summary of what that means, right? So T-Mobile is saying, and this is what Mike Sievert said, this was part of his presentation at the Capital Markets Day. They're saying that they're not defending their position in any of those markets. They're growing their share, and it's being apparently led by network seekers, is what he said. He didn't call them premium customers. He just called that customer network seeking. In other words, looking for a better network. The problem with that is, right, it's good that T-Mobile is able to get that type of customer now with the new network, all the spectrum, right, T-Priority, having to work through the slicing, getting the SA core ready and tuned and optimized. So now they can go after that customer. But one thing that they're no longer doing and that they gave up the price leadership. They clearly gave that up. Right? If you look at business plans, I mean, if you break all of this down on a spreadsheet, even if you talk about single line customers for business plans, T-Mobile is now the most expensive. If you look over to the wireless side, you look at their Beyond More and Beyond Experience, they're the most expensive. They are the most expensive. There's telco recovery fees. There's taxes included now. They're the most expensive. And as they continue to put themselves in the premium position, which is what they're doing, and they're going after network seekers and more business, right? I've said this in another video. I can see T-Mobile being the most expensive across the entire portfolio of plans. You know, not that they have many, but if we're talking like entry level, the middle plan, and the premium plan, T-Mobile could become the most expensive carrier in the United States across the board. So how does that hold up now in a saturated market that's getting more saturated, right? That has convergence competition from cable, Charter, and Comcast. They converge customers, right? Because you can only get their wireless services if you have the home broadband, right? So they're converging customers. Verizon recently stated they're going to converge customers. Today, that's a 16% number. That's going to double over the next few years. So they're going to get to a 40% convergence rate. And AT&T is already at 40%. And they're still growing and they're still building out, right? And they told us in the Lumen markets, they have low market share on wireless. So Denver, Seattle, Salt Lake City, all those big heavyweight markets, AT&T is going to grow their wireless market share. So although today, right, and I'm not speaking about this like in a couple of months, right? I'm talking more of a longer term view here, right? Once AT&T can close the Lumen deal and get that integrated, right? Once Verizon has more integration of the Frontier assets and they fully close that deal and they hit the ground running with the marketing and the go-to market of Verizon Fios. They already told us the convergence works. Cable knows the convergence works. T-Mobile today does not have anything close to be able to match the convergence scale that their other competitors can compete at. They can't. Lumos won't get them there. Metronet won't get them there. And FWA for sure won't get them there. El Paso, Texas is a perfect example. AT&T has 40% market penetration with fiber. How does T-Mobile compete against that with a few FWA customers? You know what I mean? Like, I understand at scale, it looks like they're adding 400,000 or 500,000 customers, but and they are adding them, but on a per market basis, it's not like they're getting entire neighborhoods onto the sector. They're picking certain neighborhoods. Okay, you know, we'll open up 5 houses in this neighborhood. We'll open up 4 here. We'll do 10 there. That's how they're looking at it. AT&T has 40% fiber penetration. They can take the whole neighborhood. They can take 1/3. They can take half. They have so much flexibility with that fiber. And the same will be said for Verizon, because Verizon told us their convergence numbers are expected to double. So it's gonna get a lot tougher for T-Mobile. So I'm fully expecting behind the scenes that T-Mobile is looking into this. Right? They're looking at how that's going to affect their business. They're going to look at how it's going to affect their guidance. They're going to look at ways to combat. They're going to look at ways to move forward. They're going to look at ways, okay, from a business perspective, what do we need to buy? What do we need to get into to really start growing our convergence scale? Because that's where the market is heading. Cable does it. Verizon's going to do it now at a bigger scale with Frontier. AT&T is going to do it. They're talking about 70 million homes. T-Mobile is the odd man looking out. Right? For now, they're enjoying a lot of wireless success. But eventually, that market is going to tap out. They're eventually going to get to a successful percentage, right? A fair share, whatever you want to call it. And in most of those small markets and rural areas where they want to get to 20%, right? They already told us they're outgrowing their share, their market share size by double. They're taking win share like crazy. So eventually, right, they will get to a certain market share where they're going to have to say, hey, we don't have a lot of upside left, right? They're going to have to acknowledge that eventually. Right? They're going to be like, yeah, we can still grow, but it's not anything where we can put on paper that we're going to go from 10 to 30%, right? So that's still the case today. Like I said, I'm talking more of a longer term view. So eventually T-Mobile will have to react, and they can be as competitive as they want to be on the wireless side. But eventually they're going to have to respond with business decisions, deal makings, and some sort of higher capex if they need to build out organically, right? Like say Lumos needs a cash infusion, Metronet needs cash to further scale homes passed. All of that needs to be looked at by T-Mobile. And I understand behind the scenes, they're constantly looking at stuff like that. But timing is everything, right? The wireless side, T-Mobile has enjoyed success. They got the Sprint merger. They're set to get US Cellular once that closes. So that's a big deal for T-Mobile coming from where they came from, right? They got a company named Swiftel. They got a company name, I think it was Shentel, through the Sprint merger that gave them just a lot more coverage and assets, and now with US Cellular, 2,100 new sites. So they're definitely enjoying success. But to sit here and say maybe like 5 or more years from now that if T-Mobile doesn't drastically change and shift, right, that they're going to be on the outside looking in. And I feel like already they're 10 steps behind on the convergence piece, right? Because they're on the outside looking in, right? They're still taking a defensive position against convergence. They say the market had 80 to 85% of the US has a chance to already bundle services and all this other stuff. What does that have to do with anything, right? AT&T says most customers want their service from one provider. And I totally agree with that. I don't want to have to contact these guys and this. No, I want everything one bill, one service provider that if I have an issue, I just call one company, right? I don't want to deal with all this different customer service stuff. So I totally agree with AT&T on this. Verizon, at the scale that they're going to be at, they're going to get to 40 million homes passed. They're gonna look into the convergence piece in a bigger way as well. And T-Mobile is going to look at convergence too. They're going to converge the Lumos customer and the Metronet customer. But that's only like 12 to 15 million homes passed, right? They're going to have to get to 30. They're going to have to get to 40 because they're competing now in the wireline space. It's not just something speculating. It's not just something that is being talked about. They're actually competing there. And when analysts and everyone starts taking a look, they're going to be like, well, Verizon's at 40 million. AT&T's at 60 million. Where's T-Mobile? They're at 12, 15 million. Or, how do they get to 20? How are they going to get to 30, right? That's going to be discussed, and they're going to be asked on that. And we'll see what their response will be in the future. But for now, wirelessly, they're still killing it, as you guys can see on the board. They're growing in the number 1 markets. They're growing in the number 2 markets, and they're growing share in the number 3 markets. But eventually, that's going to slow down, right? They're still telling us the same guidance. But like I said, they're the most expensive carrier if you break everything down. They don't offer switch. They don't offer mix and match. I mean, it's not hard to figure this out anymore, right? The T-Mobile we once knew is now totally different. And I really am curious to see how the market is going to respond to them more longer term, right? For now, it's still okay, but I want to see how this is going to go longer term as we see churn rates and everything else at the quarterly earnings. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. See y'all in the next one. Peace.